They called her a gold digger. They laughed when she walked into the church wearing a dress from a thrift store, heavily pregnant and utterly alone. To the wealthy Kensington family, Abigail was nothing more than a mistake their son had made, a poor waitress who didn't belong in their world of private jets and Hamptons estates. But they didn't know what their son had done just days before he died. They didn't know about the single rusted key hidden in his pocket, and they certainly didn't expect that the homeless widow they mocked was about to inherit the one thing they would kill to possess. Stick around, because this $500 million revenge is going to feel so good. The rain over Seattle wasn't just falling. It was punishing the earth, hammering against the stained glass of St. James Cathedral like 1,000 tiny fists demanding entry. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of expensive lilies and the murmured condolences of the city's elite. Abigail Jensen stood near the heavy oak doors, shaking the water from her fraying umbrella. She was 7 months pregnant, her ankles swollen, her back aching with a dull, throbbing rhythm that matched her heartbeat. She wore a simple black dress she had bought at Goodwill 3 days ago for $12. It was clean, but the fabric was thin, and in the cavernous, draughty cathedral, she shivered. She looked out at the sea of black cashmere Italian wool and designer veils. These were the Kensingtons and their inner circle, the titans of tech, the royalty of the Pacific Northwest. And at the front, in a casket that cost more than Abigail had earned in her entire life, lay Liam. Her Liam. He wasn't the Kensington heir to her. He was just the man who loved blueberry pancakes and forgot to cap the toothpaste. But to the people in this room, he was an asset that had been lost. Abigail took a breath, steeling herself, and began to walk down the center aisle. The murmuring stopped. It didn't taper off. It was severed, replaced by a silence so loud it rang in her ears. Heads turned, eyes narrowed. She could hear the whispers cutting through the quiet, like serrated knives. "Is that her? The waitress god, look at that dress. I heard she trapped him. Tragic, really. Now she's left with nothing." Abigail kept her eyes on the casket, refusing to look at the pews. She made it to the front row, the spot reserved for the widow. But as she moved to sit, a cane blocked her path. It was tipped with silver, resting on the velvet cushion. Abigail looked up into the cold, steel-grey eyes of Victoria Kensington Liam's mother. Victoria didn't look like a grieving mother. She looked like a CEO, handling a hostile merger. Her pearls were worth a mortgage. Her face was a mask of perfectly applied makeup and disdain. "You must be confused," Victoria said, her voice low but projecting clearly enough for the first 5 rows to hear. "This seating is for family." Abigail felt the blood rush to her face. "Victoria, I'm his wife." "You were a mistake," Victoria corrected, not moving the cane. "A 6-month lapse in judgment. My son is dead, which means your tenuous connection to this family has been severed. The staff seating is in the loft. I suggest you go there before you embarrass yourself further." Next to Victoria sat Preston Kensington Liam's older brother. He was checking his watch, a Patek Philippe that glinted in the dim light. He smirked, looking Abigail up and down with a sneer of disgust. "Go on, Abby. Don't make a scene. You've got what you wanted, haven't you, the Kensington name? Too bad it doesn't come with a payout if he dies before the vestment period." Tears pricked Abigail's eyes, hot and stinging. She wanted to scream that she didn't care about their money, that she just wanted to be near her husband one last time. But she knew they wouldn't believe her. To them, poverty was a character flaw, and she was irredeemable. She looked at the empty seat next to the casket. Then she looked at her stomach, where Liam's daughter kicked softly, unaware that her grandmother was looking at her mother like she was trash. "I'm not going to the loft," Abigail whispered, her voice trembling but firm. "I'm sitting with my husband." She stepped over the cane. The gasp in the room was audible. Victoria's eyes widened in genuine shock that this nobody dared to defy her. But Abigail sat down. She didn't sit in the center. She sat on the very edge of the pew, leaving a foot of space between her and Victoria, a demilitarized zone of grief and hatred. The service was a blur of hollow eulogies. Preston spoke about Liam's potential and his legacy in the company, never mentioning his laugh or his kindness. Victoria didn't speak at all. She just stared straight ahead, her knuckles white on her cane. When it was over, Abigail stood up to place a single white rose on the casket. It was all she could afford. As she laid it on the polished mahogany, Preston leaned in, his breath smelling of scotch and peppermints. "Enjoy the flower," he hissed into her ear, "because the lawyers are coming tomorrow, and by the time we're done, you won't even be able to afford the dirt to bury him in." Abigail walked out of the church alone. No one offered her a ride. No one offered an umbrella. She walked to the bus stop in the pouring rain, clutching her stomach, while the line of black limousines drove past, splashing muddy water onto her only black dress. But as she sat on the cold metal bench, waiting for the number 4 bus, a black sedan slowed down. It wasn't a limousine. It was a sleek, nondescript government-issue Lincoln. The window rolled down, and an older man with wire-rimmed glasses looked out. He didn't look like a Kensington friend. He looked like an accountant who had seen too much. "Mrs. Jensen?" he asked. "Yes," Abigail said, guarding her purse instinctively. "My name is Arthur Sterling. I was Liam's private counsel, not the family lawyer. His lawyer." He extended a card. "Be at the reading of the will tomorrow at the Kensington estate. Do not let them bully you into not attending. Do you understand? They said I get nothing," Abigail said, shivering. Arthur Sterling looked at her, and for a second, a flicker of something like grim satisfaction crossed his face. "They say a lot of things, Mrs. Jensen, but the dead speak louder. Be there." The window rolled up, and the car merged into the traffic, leaving Abigail alone in the rain, with a spark of fear and hope. The Kensington estate in Medina was less of a home and more of a fortress. High walls, security cameras that tracked your eye movement, and a driveway long enough to land a small plane. Abigail arrived in a taxi. The driver, a kind Sikh man named Raj, looked at the house and then back at her. "You want me to wait, miss, this place? It looks like it eats people." "I'll be okay, Raj. Thank you," Abigail said, though she didn't feel okay. She felt like a mouse walking into a hawk's nest. She was ushered into the library by a butler who refused to make eye contact. The library was vast, smelling of old paper and brandy. Victoria sat in a high-backed leather chair near the fireplace sipping tea. Preston was pouring himself a drink at the bar. Also present was the family's legal team. 3 men in identical grey suits from the firm Cromwell and Sullivan. They looked like sharks in human skin. But sitting at a small table in the corner was Arthur Sterling, the man from the sedan. He had a battered leather briefcase and a calm demeanor that seemed to irritate Victoria. "Let's get this over with," Preston said, dropping ice cubes into his glass. "Give the girl her nuisance check so she can leave." One of the shark lawyers, a man named Mr. Blackwood cleared his throat. "Actually, Mr. Kensington, we are not presiding over this will. Liam Jensen executed a new testament 48 hours before his passing. Mr. Sterling here is the executor." Victoria's teacup clattered onto its saucer. "What Liam used the family council. He always did." "Apparently not," Arthur Sterling said, standing up. He opened his battered briefcase. "Shall we begin?" The tension in the room spiked. Preston stopped drinking. Victoria's eyes went slit thin. "To my mother, Victoria." Arthur read his voice, dry and steady. "I leave the portrait of Grandfather Kensington that hangs in the hall. May it remind you that looking backward is the only way you know how to live." Preston snorted. Victoria went pale. "That ungrateful—" "To my brother Preston," Arthur continued, "I leave my collection of vintage golf clubs. Perhaps with them you can finally learn to play a fair game, though I doubt it." Preston slammed his glass down. "This is a joke. Liam didn't write this. It is notarized and video witnessed," Arthur said calmly. "And now to the remainder of the estate." The room went silent. This was it. The Kensington fortune. Liam had his own trust fund investments. Real estate assets totaling roughly $20 million. "To my wife, Abigail Jensen," Arthur read. Victoria stood up. "She gets nothing." They were married 6 months. The prenup. The prenup was voided by Liam 3 months ago. Arthur interrupted. He filed the paperwork himself. He wanted to ensure his child was protected. Abigail covered her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. He had done that. For her. "However," Arthur continued, and Abigail's heart stopped. "The liquid assets, the real estate, and the investment portfolios are gone." "Gone," Preston shouted. "What do you mean, gone?" "Liam liquidated everything a week before he died," Arthur said. "Every stock, every bond. The penthouse in downtown Seattle. He sold it all." "And where is the money?" Victoria demanded, her voice shrill. $20 million doesn't just vanish." "He donated it," Arthur said, "to the Seattle Unhoused Initiative and the Children's Hospital Research Fund." The silence that followed was deafening. Preston looked like he was going to be sick. Victoria sank back into her chair, looking grey. "He gave it away," Preston whispered. "He gave our money to the homeless." "His money," Arthur corrected. But he turned to Abigail. "He did leave you one specific item, Mrs. Jensen." Arthur reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small, heavy box wrapped in brown paper. He walked over to Abigail and placed it in her hands. "What is it?" Victoria snapped. "Jewelry diamonds." Abigail tore the paper. Inside was a beat-up, tarnished metal box. It looked like an old fishing tackle box or a mechanic's lunch pail. It was locked with a heavy, rusted padlock. There was a note taped to the top. "For Abby. The only thing of real value I ever owned. Don't let them see what's inside until you're ready to burn it all down." "Open it," Preston commanded, stepping forward. "It's locked," Abigail said, clutching the box to her chest. "Where is the key?" Victoria demanded. "Arthur, give her the key." "There is no key in the estate inventory," Arthur said. "Liam said the key was where it needed to be." Preston laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "So that's it." He gave $20 million to charity and left his pregnant wife a rusty box she can't even open. He was insane. I knew it. He finally cracked. Victoria stood up, regaining her composure. She looked at Abigail with a mixture of pity and triumph. "Well, it seems Liam got the last laugh on all of us. He left us insults, and he left you a piece of junk. I suppose this concludes our business." She rang a small bell. "Jenkins will show you out, Abigail, and do not return. If you step foot on this property again, I will have you arrested for trespassing." Abigail stood up, the heavy box in her arms. She felt a wave of dizziness. She had no money. She had no home. Her lease was up in 2 days. She had a baby coming, and all she had was a rusty box. "Wait," Preston said, eyeing the box. "I'll give you $500 for the box. Maybe I can use it for tools." Abigail looked at Preston. She looked at the sneer on his face. She remembered Liam's note. Burn it all down. "No," Abigail said quietly. "Suit yourself. Enjoy the shelter." Preston spat. Abigail walked out of the library, past the staring servants, and out the front door. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still grey. As she walked down the long driveway, Arthur Sterling's car pulled up alongside her again. "Get in, Abigail," he said softly. "I can't pay you, Mr. Sterling. I have nothing." "Get in," he insisted. She climbed into the warm leather seat. Arthur looked at the box in her lap. "Liam told me you might need help finding the key," Arthur said. "He said you should check the place where you two had your first date." Abigail blinked. "The old pier under the boardwalk." "He said under the loose board where we hid from the rain." Arthur started the car. "Do you want to go there?" "Yes," Abigail said. "But Mr. Sterling, why did he do this? Why leave me broke?" Arthur drove through the heavy iron gates, leaving the Kensington estate behind. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "He didn't leave you broke, Abigail. He left you safe. If he had left you, the 20 million Victoria and Preston would have tied you up in court for 10 years. You would have starved paying legal fees. He knew that. So he gave it away. He gave the known assets away," Arthur corrected. "But Liam was working on something else, something the family didn't know about, something he kept entirely separate from Kensington Industries." "What was it?" Arthur smiled, a small, secretive smile. "That's what's in the box, Abigail. But be warned. Once you open that box, you start a war. The Kensingtons think they are powerful. But what Liam built, it has the power to swallow them whole." Abigail looked down at the rusted metal. She ran her hand over the cold padlock. "Take me to the pier," she said. The tires of Arthur Sterling's sedan crunched over the gravel lot of Pier 59. It was a derelict stretch of the Seattle waterfront, slated for demolition for years, but forgotten by the city bureaucracy. The wooden boardwalk was rotted in places, skeletons of old pilings jutting out of the grey water like broken teeth. "Stay in the car," Arthur suggested, eyeing the desolate surroundings. "I can go look." "No," Abigail said, unbuckling her seatbelt. "He left it for me. I have to do it." She stepped out. The wind here was fierce, whipping her hair across her face and chilling her through the thin black dress. She wrapped her arms around her belly, whispering a soft apology to her unborn daughter for the cold, and walked onto the creaking wood. She remembered the night vividly. It was 2 years ago. They had bought fish and chips from a truck and run under the boardwalk to escape a sudden downpour. They had sat on a dry patch of sand, listening to the rain thunder above them. That was the night Liam told her he didn't care about his last name. "I'm just Liam," he had said, "and you're the only real thing I've ever found." Abigail found the spot near the third support beam. There was a loose plank, slightly warped by years of sea spray. She knelt, ignoring the sharp pain in her knees and the strain in her lower back. She pried at the wood with her fingernails. It wouldn't budge. Panic flared in her chest. What if it wasn't here? What if Arthur was wrong? What if Liam had just been delirious? She looked around and found a discarded metal spike. Using it as a lever, she gritted her teeth and shoved it into the crack. With a groan of rusted nails, the board popped up. Beneath it, nestled in the dry sand and wrapped in a heavy-duty Ziploc bag, was a small brass key. Abigail grabbed it, her hands shaking so hard she almost dropped it into the sand. She clutched it to her chest, letting out a sob that was half laugh, half cry. She hobbled back to the car, soaking wet, and climbed in. "Got it?" Arthur asked. His eyes were scanning the perimeter, checking for followers. "Yes." Abigail pulled the rusty box onto her lap. She inserted the brass key into the padlock. It turned with a satisfying click. She threw back the lid. It wasn't money. It wasn't diamonds. Inside the box sat a ruggedized external hard drive, a thick leather-bound notebook, and a stack of legal documents. On top of the stack was a bank card, black with no name on it, just a chip and a series of numbers. "What is this?" Abigail whispered. She picked up the notebook. It was filled with Liam's handwriting. Diagrams, code, flow charts. It looked like gibberish to her, but the headers were clear. Project Ether, distributed ledger, encryption protocols. "Arthur," she asked, handing him the book. Arthur adjusted his glasses and flipped through the pages. His expression shifted from curiosity to absolute astonishment. He stopped the car on the side of the road, the engine idling. "My God," Arthur breathed. He actually finished it. Finished what? Liam wasn't just an executive at Kensington Tech, Abigail. He was their lead architect. But he hated how his family did business, stealing data, selling user privacy to the highest bidder. About 3 years ago, he started working on a side project, a new operating system based on blockchain technology, unhackable, completely private. He called it Ether. "Is it worth anything?" Abigail asked, touching the hard drive. Arthur looked at her, his face grave. "Kensington Tech is valued at $4 billion, mostly because of their data mining contracts. If Ether is released, it renders their entire business model obsolete. It doesn't just compete with them, it destroys them. And this," he tapped the hard drive, "this is the source code." "So it's a weapon," Abigail said, realizing the weight of the metal box. "It's a nuclear bomb," Arthur corrected, "and the Kensingtons don't know it exists. They think Liam was just a lazy heir. If they find out you have this, they won't just sue you, Abigail. They will come for you with everything they have." Abigail looked at the black bank card. "And that," Arthur said, taking the card and checking a number on the back against a list in his briefcase, "is an offshore holding account. Liam must have been siphoning his own salary bonuses into it for years to fund the project." "How much is in it?" Arthur pulled out his phone, logged into a secure portal, and typed in the numbers. He turned the screen to her. Abigail gasped. $250,000. It wasn't millions. It wasn't the fortune everyone thought the Kensingtons had. But to a woman with $12 in her pocket, it was a lifeline. "That's your war chest," Arthur said. "It's enough to keep you hidden, pay for the baby, and pay for specialized help. But it won't last forever. The real value is the code. The right buyer. Google, Apple, a government would pay $500 million for this easily. Maybe more." $500 million. Abigail repeated the number, feeling abstract, impossible. "Or," Arthur said, his voice dropping an octave, "you can burn it, destroy the drive, walk away with the cash, move to Nebraska, and live a quiet life. The Kensingtons will never know. Abigail looked out the window. She saw the rain washing over the city that had chewed her up and spit her out. She thought of Victoria's cane blocking her path. She thought of Preston's sneer. Enjoy the flower. They had treated Liam like a defective product. They had treated her like a parasite. And now they were sitting in their mansion, drinking scotch, thinking they had won. Abigail closed the box. Her hands were no longer shaking. I don't want to move to Nebraska, Arthur. Arthur smiled, a sharp, dangerous glint in his eye. Good. Then we need to get you underground. Because once Preston realizes the company servers are empty, the hunt begins. The headquarters of Kensington Industries was a glass monolith piercing the Seattle skyline. On the 40th floor, in a boardroom that cost more than most schools, Preston Kensington was screaming. What do you mean, corrupted? He roared, throwing a tablet across the polished table. The chief technical officer, a sweaty man named Miller, flinched. I don't mean corrupted, sir. I mean gone. When Liam died, his credentials were auto-revoked, but it triggered a dead man's switch. The entire Sector 4 database, the new compression algorithm we promised the Defense Department, it's wiped. Clean. Victoria Kensington sat at the head of the table, her face unreadable. Backups, Miller. Use the backups. We tried, Miller stammered. The backups were overwritten with a video file, a looping video of a cartoon dancing bear. Preston slammed his fist on the table. He's mocking us even from the grave. The defense contract is worth $80 million this quarter alone. Victoria said, her voice icy calm. If we don't deliver that code, we are in breach. The stock will plummet. Liam didn't just delete it. Preston realized, his eyes narrowing. He was soft. He wouldn't destroy work. He stole it. He put it somewhere. Where? Victoria asked. We searched his penthouse. We searched his office. Preston's face went slack, then twisted into a mask of fury. The box, that stupid rusty box at the reading of the will. Victoria stood up. The widow. She has it, Preston snarled. She probably doesn't even know what it is. She thinks it's a keepsake. Find her, Victoria commanded. Use the security team. Use the private contractors. I don't care what it costs. Get that box back, and if she's opened it, make sure she stays quiet. And if she refuses? Preston asked, checking his gunmetal watch. Victoria walked to the window, looking down at the city below like a god surveying insects. She's a pregnant waitress, Preston. She doesn't have the resources to refuse us. Crush her. 3 days later, Abigail was holed up in a motel on the outskirts of Tacoma. It was the kind of place where you paid cash and didn't ask about the stains on the carpet. Arthur had set it up under a false name, Jane Doe. The room was small, smelling of stale cigarettes and lemon polish. The blinds were drawn tight. On the rickety desk, the ruggedized hard drive was plugged into a cheap laptop Arthur had bought for her. Abigail had been watching the video files included on the drive. It was Liam sitting in his office late at night, looking tired but determined. Hey, Abby, the video Liam said. If you're watching this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry. I know my family. I know how they treated you. I built Ether to free us, but I ran out of time. Abigail touched the screen, tears streaming down her face. Ether isn't just software, Liam continued. It's a record. It tracks every illegal transaction Kensington Industries has made in the last 10 years. The bribery of senators, the illegal dumping of e-waste in third-world countries, the theft of medical data. It's all here encrypted in the blockchain. You hold the smoking gun, Abby. You can sell the tech and become richer than them, or you can release the data and send them to prison, or both. The choice is yours. But be careful. They are sharks, and sharks smell blood. The video ended. Abigail sat back, her heart racing. It wasn't just money. It was justice. She held the power to destroy the people who had mocked her husband's death. Suddenly, a heavy thud shook the door. Abigail froze. Another thud. Someone was kicking it. "Housekeeping!" A deep, gruff voice yelled. It wasn't housekeeping. It was 11:00 p.m. Abigail grabbed the hard drive and shoved it into her purse. She grabbed the rusty box. She looked around the room frantically. The bathroom window. The door frame splintered. A man in a dark maintenance uniform burst in. He was huge with a shaved head and a neck tattoo. He wasn't law enforcement. He was a hired thug. "Mrs. Jensen," the man rumbled, stepping over the broken latch. "Mr. Kensington wants his property back." Abigail scrambled backward, knocking over a lamp. "I don't have anything." "Don't make this hard. You're pregnant. We don't want an accident," the man said, pulling a collapsible baton from his belt. Abigail's hand touched the heavy ceramic base of the broken lamp. As the man lunged, Abigail didn't scream. She swung. The ceramic base connected with the man's temple with a sickening crack. He stumbled, stunned blood trickling down his face. It wasn't enough to knock him out, but it bought her seconds. She bolted for the bathroom, locking the flimsy door behind her. She heard him roar in anger and throw his weight against it. The wood began to crack immediately. Abigail struggled with the window. It was painted shut. Crash, the bathroom door gave way. The man grabbed her by the hair. Abigail screamed, twisting, scratching at his face. "Get off me! Give me the drive!" he shouted, pinning her against the sink. Suddenly, a high-pitched siren wailed not from outside but from Abigail's purse. It was a personal safety alarm Arthur had given her. It was ear-splittingly loud in the small tiled room. The thug flinched, distracted by the noise. In that split second, the motel room door, already broken, swung open again. A silhouette appeared. It wasn't Arthur. It was a woman. She was tall, wearing a leather motorcycle jacket and a helmet that hid her face. She stepped into the room, assessed the situation in a heartbeat, and moved with terrifying speed. She grabbed the thug by the back of his collar and his belt, and with a grunt of effort, slammed him face first into the tiled wall. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious. The woman turned to Abigail. She flipped up her visor. She had piercing green eyes and a scar running through her left eyebrow. She looked to be about Abigail's age but hardened, like steel tempered in fire. "You Abigail?" the woman asked, her voice raspy. Abigail nodded, trembling, clutching her stomach. "Who are you?" "Arthur sent me. Name's Jax. He said things might get hot." Jax looked at the unconscious giant on the floor. "He was right. We need to move. Now." "Where are we going?" Abigail asked, stepping over the thug. Jax kicked the thug's baton across the room and grabbed Abigail's bag. "Somewhere the Kensingtons can't track you. You just graduated from a nuisance to a target, honey. Welcome to the big leagues." They ran out into the night, the rain starting again, masking their escape. Abigail looked back at the motel room one last time. Liam was right. The war had started, and she was done running. Jax drove a beat-up Ford Bronco that smelled of engine oil and peppermint gum. They drove for 3 hours, leaving the city lights far behind, winding deep into the Cascade Mountains. The rain turned into a light mist, wrapping the trees in a ghostly shroud. Arthur told me everything, Jack said, breaking the silence as she navigated a hairpin turn. About the code. About the money. Are you a bodyguard? Abigail asked, clutching the seatbelt. Jax laughed a short, dry sound. I'm a freelancer. I used to work security for Kensington Tech, actually, until I caught Preston Kensington harassing an intern, and I broke his nose. They fired me, blacklisted me. Arthur was the only one who helped me find work. I owe him. So you hate them too, Abigail said. Hate is a strong word, Jack said, shifting gears. I prefer aggressively dislike, and I really enjoy ruining their day. They pulled up to a cabin hidden deep in the woods. It looked rustic from the outside, but inside it was a high-tech bunker. Monitors lined the walls, servers hummed in the basement, and the windows were reinforced polycarbonate. Arthur was waiting for them, looking more disheveled than usual. He had a pot of coffee brewing and stacks of files spread across the kitchen table. You're safe here, Arthur said, ushering them in. This is off the grid. No jeeps, no cell signal, unless we bounce it through the encrypted router. They found me at the Motel Arthur, Abigail said, sinking into a chair. They sent a man to hurt me. Arthur's face darkened. I know. We underestimated their desperation. They are bleeding money. The stock dropped 12% today when the rumors of the lost data hit the market. Good, Abigail said, surprising herself with the venom in her voice. It gets better, Arthur said, pulling a file from the stack. I've been analyzing the ether ledger. Abigail Liam didn't just track their crimes, he built a kill switch. A kill switch. He embedded a command in their central server architecture years ago. If the ledger is published to the public blockchain, it triggers a cascade failure in their system. It wipes their proprietary algorithms. It effectively erases Kensington Industries from the digital map. Abigail stared at the hard drive sitting on the table. It was a small black rectangle, but it felt like it was pulsing with energy. So I can end them, she whispered. Yes, Arthur said. But there's a catch. To upload the ledger, we need a direct connection to their mainframe. We can't do it remotely. The firewall is too thick. So we have to go back there, Jax asked, leaning against the counter, cleaning her nails with a knife. Not just there, Arthur said. Into the server room on the 50th floor, the penthouse level. Victoria's office. Abigail shook her head. That's impossible. They'll have guards everywhere. There is one way, Arthur said. Tomorrow night is the Kensington Foundation Gala. It's held in the atrium of the headquarters. Hundreds of guests. Senators, celebrities, press. Security will be focused on the perimeter, not the internal elevators. And how do we get a pregnant widow on the blacklist into the most exclusive party of the year? Jax asked. Arthur smiled, pulling 2 tickets from his jacket pocket. Because Liam didn't just leave a box, Abigail. He left invitations. He bought these 6 months ago under a shell company. You and a guest are on the VIP list. Abigail looked at the tickets. They were embossed with gold leaf. I can't go in there, Abigail said, looking at her swollen stomach. They'll recognize me. Not if we change the narrative, Arthur said. They see you as a poor, helpless widow. So don't be that. Be the owner of a $500 million asset. Walk in there like you own the place. Because technically you do. Jax grinned. I can get us in. But you need to look the part. No goodwill dresses. Abigail thought about the baby. She thought about the future Liam wanted for them, a future free of fear. She thought of Preston's face when he realized she had won. Do we have a budget? Abigail asked. Arthur tapped the black bank card. $250,000. Let's go shopping. The Kensington Industries atrium was transformed into a wonderland of white orchids and crystal chandeliers. A string quartet played softly in the corner, drowned out by the chatter of Seattle's wealthiest citizens. Waiters circulated with champagne and caviar. Victoria Kensington stood at the top of the grand staircase, wearing a gown of emerald silk. She looked regal, untouchable. Preston stood beside her, looking nervous, constantly checking his phone. "Stop fidgeting," Victoria hissed. "Smile. The senator is looking." "We haven't found her," Preston whispered. The tracker on the thug's car went dead in the mountains. "She's gone. She's a pregnant waitress, Preston. She's probably hiding in a shelter. She doesn't know what she has. We'll find her eventually." Suddenly, the chatter in the room quieted. A hush swept through the crowd, starting at the entrance and rippling outward like a wave. Victoria frowned. "What is it now? Did the mayor arrive?" She looked toward the entrance and froze. Walking through the massive glass doors was a woman. She was heavily pregnant, but she moved with a grace that commanded attention. She wore a floor-length gown of midnight blue velvet that hugged her form tailored to perfection. Around her neck hung a diamond pendant that caught the light like a star. Her hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, and her makeup was flawless. It was Abigail. But it wasn't the Abigail from the funeral. This Abigail held her head high. Her eyes swept the room with a cool appraisal that made billionaires look away. Walking beside her in a sharp black tuxedo was a tall, striking woman with a scar through her eyebrow, Jax posing as her partner. "Is that the widow?" someone whispered. "My God, she looks stunning." "I heard she inherited millions." Preston's jaw dropped. How did she get to something? Abigail and Jax moved through the crowd. They weren't hiding. They were the center of gravity. "Keep walking," Jax whispered, smiling for the cameras. "Elevators are behind the ice sculpture." "They're staring," Abigail murmured, her heart pounding against her ribs. "Let them stare. You're the queen tonight." As they neared the center of the room, Victoria descended the stairs, cutting through the crowd like a shark fin. Preston followed close behind. They blocked Abigail's path. "You have some nerve," Victoria said, her voice low and dangerous, though she maintained a fake smile for the onlookers. "Crash my son's funeral, and now crash my gala security." "I wouldn't do that," Abigail said, her voice calm and amplified by the acoustics of the atrium. She didn't whisper. She spoke clearly. "I have a ticket, Victoria, and I'm here to discuss a business acquisition." "Acquisition," Preston scoffed. "You don't have two nickels to rub together." "I have something better," Abigail said. She leaned in closer. "I have the key, and I know what's in the ledger." The color drained from Victoria's face instantly. It was as if she had been slapped. "You're bluffing," Preston stammered. "Am I?" Abigail asked. "Project Ether, Sector 4. The illegal dumping in the Pacific. Shall I go on? Or should we talk in your office?" Victoria stared at her. For the first time, Abigail saw fear in the older woman's eyes. Real, unadulterated fear. "Upstairs," Victoria hissed. "Now!" "After you," Abigail said. They moved toward the private elevators. Jax stayed close to Abigail. As the doors closed, shutting out the party, the silence in the elevator was suffocating. "You have no idea what you're doing," Preston said, sweating. "You're playing with fire." "No, Preston," Abigail said, touching her stomach. "I'm putting out the fire." The elevator dinged at the 50th floor. The penthouse. They walked into Victoria's office. It was a massive room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Give me the drive," Victoria demanded, turning around, "and I will give you $5 million, right now, a wire transfer." $5 million, Abigail laughed. "Arthur said it was worth 500. "Arthur," Victoria's eyes narrowed. "That traitorous little—" $10 million, Preston shouted. 20, name your price. "My price," Abigail said, walking over to the main server terminal on Victoria's desk, "is the truth." "What are you doing?" Victoria lunged forward. Jax stepped in, blocking her with a stiff arm. "I wouldn't, Vicky. You're wearing heels." Abigail pulled the ruggedized drive from her clutch. She plugged it into the terminal. "Stop her!" Preston screamed. He pulled a small handgun from his desk drawer. Jax moved instantly, but she was too far away. "Don't move!" Preston yelled, aiming the gun at Abigail. "Unplug it. Now!" Abigail froze her hand on the drive. The screen behind her was loading. "Ether upload. 10%. Preston put the gun down. Victoria said, her voice trembling. "She's pregnant. I don't care." Preston was unhinged, his eyes wild. "She's going to ruin us. She's going to take everything. I'm taking back what you stole," Abigail said, her voice steady, despite the gun pointed at her chest. "From Liam, from the people you hurt." "I said unplug it." Preston cocked the hammer. "Upload 40%. "Preston, no," Victoria screamed. Just then the elevator doors pinged open again. "Police, drop the weapon." Arthur Sterling stepped out, flanked by 4 armed police officers. Preston whipped his head around, distracted. In that second, Abigail hit enter. "Upload 100%. Execute." The screens in the room flashed red, then black. Then the Kensington Industries logo appeared fractured and dissolving into pixels. "It's done," Abigail whispered. Preston dropped the gun, sinking to his knees. "It's gone. It's all gone." Victoria looked at the black screens. She looked at Abigail. And for a moment, she didn't look like a CEO. She just looked old. "You destroyed the legacy," Victoria whispered. "No," Abigail said, placing a hand on her belly. "I saved it. Liam's legacy isn't money. It's the truth." The police moved in handcuffing Preston. Another officer approached Victoria. "Mrs. Kensington," the officer said, "we received a packet of evidence regarding fraud and embezzlement, automatically sent to our precinct 5 minutes ago. We're going to need you to come with us." Abigail watched as they were led away. The Titans of Seattle brought down by a rusty box, and a waitress they thought was nothing. Arthur walked over to Abigail. "You did it." "We did it," Abigail said, leaning against the desk, exhaustion finally hitting her. Jax clapped Arthur on the shoulder. "Not bad for a night's work. Now can we get some of those tiny crab cakes? I'm starving." The weeks following the gala were not just a scandal. They were a demolition. It started the moment the Ether upload completed. The Kensington servers didn't just go dark. They purged. But before they wiped themselves clean, they vomited a decade's worth of dirty laundry to the world. The following morning, the front page of every newspaper didn't feature the gala's fashion. It featured a photo of Preston Kensington being shoved into a police cruiser, his tuxedo torn, his face a mask of terrified disbelief. The stock Kens didn't just dip, it flatlined. Trading was halted by the SEC within an hour of the market opening. By noon, the board of directors had resigned en masse. By dinner, the Kensington Empire, a dynasty that had ruled Seattle for 40 years, was being picked apart by federal vultures. Victoria Kensington tried to fight. She hired the best defense team money could buy. But money couldn't buy silence when the blockchain had already screamed the truth. The evidence was immutable. Every bribe to a zoning commissioner, every illegal dumping order signed by her hand, every stolen patent. It was all there, mathematically proven and impossible to deny. 6 months later, the dust had finally settled, but the landscape had changed forever. Far away from the sirens and the cameras, the Oregon coast was draped in a soft golden mist. The house sat on a cliff overlooking the churning Pacific, a modern sanctuary of glass and cedar that felt 1,000,000 miles away from the cold grey rain of Seattle. Abigail Jensen sat on the expansive deck, wrapped in a cashmere cardigan that cost more than her old car. In her arms, rocking in a rhythmic slumber, was Maya Liam Jensen. The baby was 3 months old now, with a tuft of dark hair and eyes that were startlingly like her father's. "You know the perimeter sensors picked up a deer," a voice called out from the sliding glass doors. "I almost tackled it." Jax walked out, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She had traded her tactical gear for jeans and a flannel shirt, though the Glock was still holstered discreetly at the small of her back. Old habits died hard. "Let the deer live, Jax." Abigail smiled, looking up. "I think we're safe here." "You're never safe when you're worth what you're worth," Jax grunted, though she smiled as she looked at the baby. "But yeah, we're safer. The new security system is tighter than the Pentagon." A gravel crunch in the driveway signaled an arrival. It wasn't a threat. The gate hadn't alarmed. It was family. Arthur Sterling stepped out of a modest rental car. He looked different than he had 6 months ago. The weight of the secret he had carried for Liam was gone, replaced by a lightness in his step. He carried a briefcase, not battered this time, but sleek and new. "Afternoon, ladies," Arthur said, climbing the steps. He took a deep breath of the salty air. "Much better than the city smog." "Did you bring it?" Abigail asked, her voice steady. Arthur sat down at the outdoor table and clicked the latches of the briefcase. "I did. The final settlement with the Department of Justice and the Tech Consortium." He slid a heavy binder across the table. "The government has officially acquired the Ether source code to secure national infrastructure," Arthur explained. "They classified it immediately. No one will ever use it for profit again. It's gone dark, just as Liam wanted." "And the Kensington family?" Jax asked, leaning against the railing. "Did they try to block the sale?" Arthur let out a dry, satisfied chuckle. "They tried. Preston attempted to sue from his jail cell, claiming intellectual property theft. The judge threw it out in 5 minutes. Preston is looking at 15 to 20 years for corporate espionage and fraud. As for Victoria..." Abigail stiffened slightly. "What about her?" "She accepted a plea deal to avoid a life sentence," Arthur said. "She forfeited the estate in Medina. She forfeited her shares. She is currently under house arrest in a 2-bedroom condo in Bellevue, living on a government-mandated stipend. She has nothing left, Abigail. No power, no legacy. Just her name, which is now synonymous with corruption." Abigail looked down at Maya. She thought about the way Victoria had looked at her in the church. The staff seating is in the loft. "She lost because she underestimated love," Abigail said softly. She thought Liam was weak because he cared about people. She didn't realize that was the only reason he was strong enough to build Ether. "Speaking of which," Arthur said, pulling a check from the binder. "The financial transfer cleared this morning. After taxes, legal fees, and the trust set up for Maya." He handed the check to Abigail. $325,000, 1,000 ton. Abigail stared at the number. It was absurd. It was enough to buy countries. "The rest," Arthur continued, "has been deposited into the Liam Jensen Foundation. We have already broken ground on 3 new housing complexes for the unhoused in downtown Seattle, and we fully funded the pediatric wing at St. Jude's." Abigail traced the zeros on the check. "It's not my money," she whispered. "It's his. I'm just the delivery service." "He wanted you to have a life, Abby," Arthur said gently. "A real life. No worrying about rent. No worrying about the next meal. There is one last thing," Arthur added, his tone changing. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. The handwriting on the front was elegant, shaky, and familiar. To Abigail. "Victoria sent this through her lawyer," Arthur said. "She's begging to see the baby. She says she's family." The air on the deck grew cold. Jack stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "Do you want me to shred it?" Abigail took the envelope. She felt the heavy, expensive paper. She imagined Victoria sitting in her small condo, alone, realizing that the mistake she had rejected was now the mother of the only future the Kensingtons had. Abigail didn't open it. She didn't want to read the apologies of a woman who only loved power. She stood up and walked to the edge of the deck where a fire pit was crackling softly against the evening chill. "She said I wasn't family." Abigail said, her voice strong. "She made her choice in that church." She dropped the envelope into the fire. They watched as the paper curled, blackened, and turned to ash, carrying Victoria's last desperate words up into the smoke. "Family isn't blood," Abigail said, turning back to Arthur and Jax. "It's the people who stand by you in the rain." She looked at Jax, the warrior who had fought for her. She looked at Arthur, the guardian who had guided her. And she looked at Maya, the promise of tomorrow. "I think," Abigail smiled, the tears glistening in her eyes, "that we're going to be just fine." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in violent purples and soft pinks, Maya woke up and let out a small, happy coo. Abigail held her tight, listening to the ocean finally free. And that is the incredible ending to Abigail's story. From a widow mocked at a funeral to a woman who brought down a billion-dollar empire, Abigail proved that the most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate someone with nothing left to lose. The Kensingtons ended up with nothing but their pride, while Abigail used the useless, rusty box to change the world and secure her daughter's future. It's a powerful reminder that true wealth isn't what's in your bank account. It's who you have in your corner when the storm hits. I want to hear from you. Do you think Abigail was right to burn Victoria's letter without reading it? Or should she have given the grandmother one chance to see the baby? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this long-form story of drama and revenge, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I post new stories every day, and you won't want to miss the next one. Thanks for watching.